In this video, I will break down what it looks like to be on a full-time minimum wage job in London, what you pay for rent, transport, food, apart from all the numbers that I have calculated for you. I will also mention council homes, pocket living, personal allowance, and what it looks like to buy a property on minimum wage in London. This is a follow-up video to my living on 23k in London, which I published about a year and a half ago. So since then, things have obviously gone up in price. However, one of the criticisms of the video was that 23k wasn't minimum wage. Now, I looked up what minimum wage full-time salary is. Based on a 37.5-hour week, it's 24,785, so just under 25k. And based on a 40-hour week, it would be 26,436. We will work with the 25k number in this video. Something else I wanted to address. Some people said 23k isn't a full-time minimum wage salary. However, you know, there are quite a few people who work freelance and they are putting themselves out to work full-time, but they don't always make the full-time hours, which then can potentially leave you with under 25k. I just wanted to mention that. So let's talk about the actual facts. So if I look down a little bit, I did make some notes for this video. I don't have all these numbers in my head. So when we speak about roughly 25k a year, we're not actually speaking about net, we're speaking about gross. What it comes down to in a net salary per month is 1,879 and 51p. So that's a full-time minimum wage salary. Let's see what we can do with that. To find out what you pay for groceries in London, I looked at 2 different months of mine and what I spent. In February of this year, I spent around £400, and in April this year, I spent about £200. Now, why is that? I think it's because in February I had a lot of sandwiches, soups, and I think that's how it got to this number. Maybe I had one takeout, but I don't tend to buy many takeouts at all. So if you are extremely careful, you could potentially get by with £200 a month, but I have taken the average, which is £300 a month. Let's talk about other things that come up, and obviously it will be slightly different for you, but this is just as an example. I wrote down supplements, £20, gifts, £15, shampoo, £3.50, mobile phone bill, £10, clothes, £50, hygienist, £68. Now, I've just taken 1 month of mine, and so some of these numbers will vary. Some things I won't buy this month, but then I will buy them the next month. But as an average, I've written down £180 for these other things that come up. Now let's talk about rent. As an average, I wrote down £900 plus £150 bills, which equals £1,050. Depending on where you live, what property you live in, how many square meters you have, and so on and so forth. This will obviously vary. This could vary between 700 and maybe 1,400. I'm just talking about a room, not talking about a flat that you have to yourself. Now, also, I didn't put this into my calculation because it is not the average number on the market. You could potentially get a room for £700 if you are with property guardians, you can only become a property guardian if you are on a lower income, and I think you have to prove that. What it means is that you have a room, not in a regular property. It's basically properties that shouldn't be empty, and because you live there, it's kind of like you're looking after it. The problem with that, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, is that they can take the room away from you at quite short notice. I forgot how much notice they have to give you, but these rooms, for the most part, do not come furnished. Actually, I haven't seen any of these rooms furnished. So if you completely furnish that room and then you get a notice of moving, then obviously there's much more to organize and also more money involved if you need to move all your furniture, versus if you are in a furnished room, you just need to pack up your clothes and your other belongings. So yeah, you have to factor that in, and also it might not be your cup of tea. Again, because these properties are just different usually. So if you're interested in that, have a look. But yeah, that's more like the exception. That's not market price. Also, I've read that when you live in these kind of properties that you have to seek permission to have anyone over. Is that true? Please comment below. I just read that. But I was thinking the other day that rent has actually more or less doubled since COVID. Before COVID, I paid around £600. I know that was actually cheap then, so maybe you would have paid 700, but now you can pay, like I said, up to 1400 just for a single room. So it has almost doubled in price. Do you think that the government should intervene more? Do you think that there should be a rental cap? Now let's talk about transport. I'm working with the weekly prices here. So for the zones 1 and 2, it is £44.70, and that's the number we're gonna work with in this video. If you are renting a slightly cheaper, if there is anything like that, room, and you are in any of the other London zones, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, then it may be higher. For example, zones 1 to 3 would be £52.50, 1 to 4 is £64.20, and so on. It keeps just going up. But we're just gonna imagine that this person we're talking about is living in zone 1 and 2 for the purpose of this video. Obviously, this is entertainment. This is not something one has to have, but because most people actually have at least one, I did put it on my list here. So let's say you have Amazon Prime and Netflix, and actually I included Spotify here. So that, and I've always chosen the cheapest from their subscriptions. So that comes to about £21 for the subscriptions. Then for a bit more entertainment, I've put down £15 a month for books and £45 for other hobbies. Now, what does it actually come down to? Rent, £1,050, food, £300, other, £150, entertainment, £81, transport, £44.70, equals £1,625.70. So your net pay is 1,879 minus 1,625 equals £155. That's what you've left. That's what you can use to put in your savings account, in your investments. It's not much. And if anything comes up, that money ain't gonna be there. In my last video, I mentioned London living rent. So obviously I'm not going to talk about this here, but I wanted to talk about another sort of scheme that is addressed to the lower income people. And there is something that is called Pocket Living. Now let's have a look at the Pocket Living website. So it says there 20% off London flats, no catch. Well, I can tell you what the catch is. The catch, first of all, is that it's actually not just for people on a lower income, because anybody with an income up to 90k can apply. So I wouldn't call that a low income if I was on 90k. The second catch is the size. These flats are extremely small. And the third catch is the service charge. Service charge is very high. Now, in their defense, is the service charge justified? It probably is, because they have like working areas in those blocks. They have a balcony at the top. Now, don't get me wrong, all these things are nice. But if you are somebody who simply wants an affordable place to live, you could live without those. Like you probably rather have a little bit more space in your flat, not so many luxuries around, and a lower service charge. In my opinion, these flats aren't made for people on a low income. Now, what about council homes? And council homes for people on a low income? Yes, but did you know that the average wait time for a council home is 6.6 years?
Okay.
Yeah, so where are you going to live in those 6.5 years, if not more? I want to quickly tell you about council homes. So first of all, obviously the eligibility criteria, sorry, but you know what I mean. It's a bit different in every council, but it comes with a catch. First of all, you have to have lived in that council for 3 to 5 years. Your income cap is 40k, which is okay, I think. I mean, again, if something is for people on a lower income, that should be the cap. The savings cap is 30k, and you cannot own or have ever owned a property, as far as I know. Comment below if I'm wrong. And you need to have proof that you have full-time work in that borough. Now, I don't think that's right. I would honestly completely disagree with that. Like, I live in a borough of London, but I work in another borough that is very close to my borough. So that would already not make me eligible. And let's say you wanted to be smart and you thought, okay, like, because different councils have different availability for these flats. So let's say you've done your research, you know which council has more availability, and you move to that council, but then you have to live there for 3 to 5 years to even get on the wait list, and then maybe it's another. I mean, when you think about these numbers, you get depressed. But I guess I can side a little bit with the fact that they want you to live in their borough, but I think 3 to 5 years is a bit long, because maybe you had to work, you had to move for work before. Maybe it's not your fault that you had to move. Now you're not eligible. What if you've owned a property, but you've lost it, now you're broke? What if you work full time, but you couldn't find work in your borough? I mean, I just think these criteria are very frustrating and not right, in my opinion. The other thing is, I have a friend, she has a 1-bedroom council flat just at the border to London, and she pays £800 plus bills. So that would probably equal around £950 a month. When we take the salary of let's say roughly 1,900. If you pay 1,000 for your flat or your room or more, then you pay 50% or more than 50% of your salary, when in reality you shouldn't pay more than 30% of your salary. But the problem with council flats is also that they're just flats. Anyone who is single on a low income and couldn't afford more than a room also kind of can't really afford a flat, even in a council home, which is crazy. The other thing I wanted to mention, you know, the personal allowance is £12,570. That equals 1,047.50p a month. I thought about this the other day, and that's why I wanted to mention it in this video. That number does not equal what a person needs to survive in London. I mean, that number equals getting a cheap room, and you can't travel and you can't eat on that. Shouldn't the personal allowance at least cover what a person needs to live? Or should the government find a way to make the personal allowance in big cities higher? And what if you want to buy a flat? Because you don't want to be renting forever, you want to think about your future, and you want to buy a property. So I used a mortgage calculator to find out how much a person on minimum wage could borrow. Now take this with a, what do you say, grain of salt? Pinch of salt? Do your own research, okay? But what it's calculated for me when I put in these numbers that I've shared with you, it says that you could borrow £137,500. If you go on Rightmove or Zoopla and you have a look what you can buy for that amount of money, you'll probably find a garage, a piece of land, or if you're lucky, a very terrible studio, maybe a place at auction where you can't even get the survey in time before you have to commit to saying that you buy this, and you won't know everything you really need to know before signing a contract. Yeah, it makes it pretty impossible for somebody on a low salary to buy, obviously when they're solo. Let's put two low salary people together, then you have roughly 280, just under 280. Then you can find a small 1-bedroom flat. But again, not easy. But this is why a lot of people really get stuck renting. What I'd really like the government to do is look at these actual facts, and even if you're not on the minimum wage, even if you earn a bit more, you're still not earning a lot. And I'd like politicians to look at these numbers, get real with what it's like to be an average person, the person who's running this country, the people who are cleaning our streets, the people who are working in our hospitals, if they're not a surgeon or something like that. You know what I mean. Get real and find real solutions. Stop talking and start doing. What are your thoughts? I hope you enjoyed today's video. You can subscribe if you like, and see you next time. Bye.